In the face of a massive winter storm hitting Texas, the state's power grid completely collapsed. Here's how Texas Governor Greg Abbott explained the situation to Fox News.
This shows how the Green New Deal would be a deadly deal for the United States of America.
Hold on, quick reminder, the Green New Deal hasn't been passed yet in Texas or even nationally. So what's really been going on? Now, it is true that Texas generates quite a lot of power from wind turbines. The state leads the U.S. in wind power generation. In fact, the infrastructure for wind energy was actually put in place by the same Republicans who now decry it nationally. But we have to look at the bigger picture. Wind and other sources of renewable energy make up less than a quarter of the state's energy combined. Natural gas is the state's leading energy source, providing nearly half of Texas's power supply. So if frozen wind turbines aren't the root of the problem, as some conservatives have said, what happened? Well, we actually have a pretty good explanation from Governor Abbott speaking to local news, where he struck a very different tone than when he was on Fox News.
The companies that generate the power, their operations have frozen up or have tripwired and are non-operational. The ability to both manufacture and to ship and transport natural gas has been frozen also.
But wait, neighboring states were also hit by the unexpected cold snap, but they haven't had the same severe energy problems as Texas. Why is that? Well, one reason is that the rest of the contiguous United States runs on two interconnected power grids, but the Lone Star State's power grid is on its own. Way back in the 1930s, FDR created the Federal Power Commission. It oversaw electricity sales that crossed state lines. The state of Texas and its utility companies then decided they wouldn't sell electricity to other states, specifically so they could avoid being regulated by the federal government. This distaste for regulation is precisely why the Texas power grid was totally unprepared to handle such cold weather. It's also why it's incredibly difficult for most of Texas to pull energy from other states when needed, and this leads to more power outages. The state further deregulated the industry in 2002, and now its energy infrastructure is owned by a patchwork of different companies. Then, in 2011, a winter storm led to power outages similar to the ones we're seeing now. Regulators were warned that energy infrastructure in Texas had to be winterized to withstand extreme weather conditions in the future. But instead of issuing new regulations to ensure these upgrades happened, officials just issued voluntary guidelines to do so. Power companies largely ignored these guidelines over the last 10 years. Now, a decade after the 2011 storm, millions of Texans have had to deal with electricity blackouts, no heat, and freezing temperatures inside their homes. Almost 50 people have died. However, there is one exception in the state. The city of El Paso's electric company, which actually relies on the Western power grid, spent $4.5 million to winterize its energy infrastructure. Because of this, the city's been able to avoid the blackouts experienced by the rest of the state. So will leaders in the rest of the state follow El Paso's example? That remains to be seen. The price of natural gas has skyrocketed, and producers who are still operating say they've hit, quote, the jackpot, even as many Texans are being billed thousands of dollars by energy companies. Former Governor and Trump Energy Secretary Rick Perry recently said that Texans would be willing to be without electricity for longer than 3 days if it meant keeping the federal government out. But struggling Texans beg to differ.
They decided not to winterize our plants, so everything is failing. And something has to be done. Somebody has to be held accountable for it.